All right, we're going to tackle one of the biggest myths out there in personal development. The idea that you have to feel motivated to get anything done. Well, today, we're going to flip that script entirely and build a way more reliable system together.
I mean, you know the feeling, right? You watch some super inspiring video, you set this massive goal, and you feel like you can conquer the entire world. And then, Tuesday morning happens, and just like that, the fire's gone. You're back on the couch, just wondering, what on earth just happened?
So if that old cycle sounds painfully familiar, I want you to hear this. It is not a personal failure. Seriously, you haven't done anything wrong. You've just fallen into what we call the motivation trap, and it's a system that's pretty much designed to fail.
Okay, so let's break this trap down. What is it about this thing we call motivation that makes it so unreliable? Well, it really all comes down to how we define it in the first place.
Just think about that for a second. The whole idea of motivation is that your ability to act is tied directly to your mood. So, if you don't feel like working out, or writing that report, or eating healthy, you just don't. You're basically making all your progress a hostage to your emotions, which, as we all know, can change at the drop of a hat. And this is where we see the huge contrast. See motivation? That's just a feeling. It's temporary, it's a quick burst of emotion. Discipline, though, that's a system. It's a choice to act no matter how you're feeling. It's the engine that just keeps on running long after that initial spark is gone.
And that right there is the core problem. Trying to constantly hype yourself up is just exhausting. It's like having to hand crank a generator every single morning just to turn the lights on. It's totally inefficient, and let's be real, eventually you're just going to get tired of cranking.
Okay, so if motivation is the problem, then discipline is the solution. Let's start exploring how we can actually build this much more powerful system. And it's all about changing the equation from relying on emotion to focusing on action. And this is the big idea right here. This is the game changer. With discipline, you completely stop asking yourself, how do I make myself feel like doing this? And you start asking, how can I get this done even when I don't feel like it? You're separating your actions from your emotions. See, the good feelings, they don't come before the action. They come after you've put in the work. All right, so that's the big what. Now for the how. And the very first step is to stop trying to rely on sheer willpower and instead start designing your environment to do all the heavy lifting for you.
It's actually a pretty simple but really powerful three-step process. First, what's your goal? Second, what in your actual physical space is making that goal harder to reach? And third, how can you remove that friction? The whole point here is to make the right action the easiest possible option.
And these are just perfect examples of what it means to engineer your environment for success. I mean, think about it. It takes almost zero discipline to avoid junk food if you never buy it in the first place. And it's so much easier to get to the gym when your clothes are already laid out, just waiting for you. You're literally making the right choice, the easiest choice. Okay, so that's your physical space. But beyond that, there are some really powerful psychological tools we can use. Think of these as mental frameworks that help you build that consistency engine right inside your own head. This first technique, it's actually fascinating. It's called mental contrasting. So instead of just daydreaming about your goal, you actively contrast that perfect future with the reality of what's standing in your way right now. When you highlight that gap, you create this tension in your brain. It's like your brain goes, whoa, I don't like this difference between where I am and where I want to be. Let's do something about it. And that creates real, genuine energy for action. So once you've used mental contrasting to identify those real-world obstacles, you can create a super specific plan to deal with them. We're not talking about some vague goal here. This is like a pre-programmed response to a very specific trigger. And here it is, the magic formula. It is so simple, but it is unbelievably effective. It's just, if obstacle X happens, then I will do action Y. For example, if I feel too tired to work out after work, then I will immediately put on my gym clothes. You're making the decision way ahead of time, so willpower doesn't even have to be part of the equation when the moment hits.
And this isn't just theory, by the way. The research shows this stuff really works. In one study, students who used these simple if-then plans, they solved a whopping 60% more practice problems than the other students. That is a huge difference from one little mental trick.
You know, sometimes the biggest hurdle is just getting started, right? That's where the idea of a micro-action comes in. You make the first step so tiny and non-threatening that your brain doesn't even have time to object. The goal isn't go for a 1-hour run. The goal is just put on your running shoes. But so often, that one tiny, symbolic step is all you need to actually get moving. Okay, so you've designed your environment, you've started to rewire your thinking. The last piece of this puzzle is creating a feedback loop that actually makes your discipline self-sustaining. You've probably heard this saying before: what gets measured gets managed. And, it's a classic for a reason. You just can't improve what you don't track. The simple act of watching your own progress makes you way more aware of your actions and, of course, their results. And this is why it's so powerful. When you can literally see your progress, it becomes real. You see that trend line going up, you see that little bar getting taller week after week, and that provides its own kind of motivation. Not the flimsy, emotional kind, but the solid, evidence-based kind that you've earned. This is that self-fueling part of the discipline engine we talked about. Success really does breed more success. Just seeing that you are making progress, even if it feels slow, creates this internal drive to keep that streak going. You're not relying on some external video to get hyped up anymore. You are literally motivated by your own results. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've kind of torn down the whole idea of motivation and started building a new system based on discipline. But when you boil it all down, it really comes back to one simple core idea. Look, nobody just wakes up one morning with perfect, unshakable discipline. It just doesn't work that way. It's a muscle you have to build, day by day. It's the result of choosing the stairs over the elevator, of packing your lunch instead of buying it, of writing just one paragraph instead of 0. It's the accumulation of thousands of these tiny, almost unnoticeable good decisions. So I want you to forget about the grand motivational gestures for just a minute. The only thing that really matters is what you do next. Think about your biggest goal. Now, what is the absolute smallest possible action, that micro step, you can take in the next 5 minutes to move just a tiny bit closer to it? Because that right there is where discipline begins.